Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah.
Welcome to Interfaith Views and Issues. Today it is indeed a pleasure to have with us on Alhikmat TV a very prominent person, and I may want to say an internationally well-known personality, and he is no less a person than Chaplain Colonel Michael Lembke. I had the pleasure of meeting him at Religion Matters Symposium, a program that he will let us know a little bit more about, that was held at the U.S. South Command in Miami. And I must say I was very privileged to be invited by Chaplain Michael Lembke. And today it is indeed a greater pleasure to me and our viewers throughout the world, people who view Alhikmat throughout the world, Alhikmat TV. It is a pleasure for you and for myself to have a very honorable person like him, a well-experienced man, a man who has traveled throughout the world, has been to Iraq and Bosnia, the Caribbean, and you name it, he will let us know some of these countries. So, Chaplain Colonel Michael Lembke, welcome to this show on Alhikmat TV. It is a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, Sheikh Shafayat, it's indeed a pleasure for me, and thank you for what's a very humbling introduction. And I have appreciated getting to know you, and when you came to the symposium, I knew right away that I appreciated your spirit, because there was some difficulty with getting into Southcom, and then worked all that out, and you came with great words and great respect, and made a great impact on our meeting, and I really appreciate that. And so I'm happy to talk with you and your audience today.
And hence the same here, because I thought that our viewers from throughout the world, especially in the Middle East, in the Caribbean, and wherever, they will really be interested in hearing your experience, a little bit of your experience coming from a U.S. Army background, a religious background, the kind of experience you've had, the places you've been, and your sort of input and knowledge that you have gained, especially in these times, as we would say, with all the negativity going on in the world, all the anti-Islamic things, the anti-American things, you know what I'm saying, in the world. It's important that people like you, and a man like you with this sort of religious blend in the U.S. Army, you would have such an experience and such amount of light that you can share to the world, not just the Muslim community, but non-Muslims who have a misunderstanding about Islam and Muslims, and people who are just on one side of the world. They're either very secular, or those in the Muslim world who are very orthodox and religious, or extreme, if I want to put it. They have no experience about the U.S. Army, what the U.S. government does, and they got all this hate against America. You know what I'm saying? When they see a U.S. soldier, there's like, wow. A man like you could bring this blend. And if we work together, we can create this peace and harmony amongst people, so there will be a better educated people, better understanding, and we may have more peace and love in the world. What do you think, sir?
Well, I agree that there's a great opportunity. And even though, the United States Army, for one reason or another, is in a lot of different places around the world, of course, my work focuses on soldiers, and here at Southern Command, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, all the uniformed personnel, and then the civilians, to really ensure that they can exercise their religious freedom. So it's not looking at religion as a restrictive or a generator of, shall we say, instability, but it's really looking at religion as a good force, something that encourages values, encourages expression, and as you know, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that you have that ability to free exercise, and that the government isn't going to force you to believe a certain way. And that's really what I get mostly involved in the two major areas that I serve under our General John Kelly at Southern Command.
So U.S. Southern Command is what you call it, right?
Yes.
So what really takes place there? We would like to share with the audience what goes on there, what you do across there, and then I may want to ask you a little bit of some of the places you have visited throughout the world in your career and your profession, etc. So U.S. South Command, because I know it's serious security. That's why I was not even allowed on the first day when I came to the symposium.
Well,
and then we'll talk a little bit about the symposium after. What is that symposium about? So people have a good idea. So U.S. South Command.
Well, my work is to serve as a staff chaplain for General Kelly, who's our commander. Oh. So my primary work, as I said, is to ensure that any chaplains that are working with U.S. forces in Central America, South America, or in the Caribbean, which is where we work primarily, that their religious needs are met. And not only, okay, I'm a Christian, Lutheran by denomination, but my call to serve in the military is much broader than that. The commander says, we want to make sure that everybody gets to worship the way they want to. So the chaplain, myself, I'm very interested in all different kinds of faiths. So even though I can't do Muslim service or a Jewish service or be a Catholic priest, I'm talking to all of those service members and asking them, what is your need? And the commander then tries to provide as best he or she can for those religious needs. And I believe that this sends the kind of message that I want to send with religion matters.
Yes.
So we have a lot of chaplains that go into Central South America and the Caribbean. So I ensure that they have what they need to respond to the free exercise. The other thing that I do is advise the commander on more of a strategic level on this idea that it's okay to talk about religion.
Okay.
It's not okay to force your religion, in other words, to sell something to somebody they don't want.
Right.
But it's okay to talk about religion, and more chaplains and other staff people in the command are finding that area of comfort and ease in talking about religion as a factor for analysis in life and culture.
So this U.S. South Command Center, because I saw Ministry of Defense, am I correct? Something to do with defense I saw on the building when I came
there's
there. What really goes on in that territory?
Yeah, well, the Southern Command, from a U.S. perspective, is all about partnership. I mean, our theme is partnership for the Americas. Oh. So that's the area where I'm, General Kelly's main person to engage religious leaders. For instance, I was in Honduras and talked to the military chaplain there, the head of the military, and we talked about training. We talked about how that chaplain has to travel all over the country. So, you share the joys and sorrows of ministry. He's a Protestant, so we talked about how do you minister to the Roman Catholics, and then how do you minister to soldiers of other faiths. And we talked with him about women's rights and how to keep kids out of gangs and, the stability of the family. So it's a lot of the same issues that we would talk about in Miami or in other areas, but we're looking at it through religion.
So most of the U.S. Army chaplains, etc., or soldiers from different islands or countries, they will come to Southern Command in Miami at that center and go through seminars or discussions on areas of this nature, or how does that operate? Well, or you send representatives to them?
Yeah, our partnerships are usually us going down to the countries. Now, in terms of Religion Matters Symposium, we did want to bring a group of people. You know, we had about 50 people participated in that from 7 different countries, and then some, because we wanted to bring in people like you from the local Miami area.
And I really appreciate
to have a
that.
broader constituency, because as you acknowledged right off the bat, there are differences of opinion, and if we always steer around those, we're never really going to grow towards understanding. Because in my mind, the biggest thing about the fact helping people understand that religion matters, a lot of people say, well, it matters, but not much, is that we're not working for toleration. Toleration is, you know, I don't like you, but I'll stay in the room with you. Well, that's no fun.
Right.
We're seeking something else, and it's not just the lowest common denominator where we ignore things that maybe we don't agree on, or no, that we seek understanding, and sometimes that means taking a risk to talk about what we believe and how it affects our life. For instance, when you and I spoke some time ago, and I've told my colleagues that when we spoke, we talked for 2 hours about theology. You know, we talked about God. We just talked before going on the air here about inshallah. And I said, well, you know, we say if God wills it, or Deo volente in Latin, or in the country they might say Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Those are all ways of acknowledging God in life.
You know, I want to cut you a little bit on something that really I admired very much. When I came to that symposium, I was the only Muslim there, right? And there were so many other people, Jewish, Christian, different faiths. And I must congratulate you, not because you're here, but I want to let our viewers throughout the world know that, especially in a very highly, U.S. Army governmental territory, when it was lunchtime, I noticed that there was one halal meal for me. And I think that was really, really highly commendable, that you all there made the arrangement for one Muslim to make sure he had halal. And there are many times there are programs that I've been to. I won't call names. Muslims have been to, Jews or, Christians, and people don't respect their diet. And it's like all different kind of things, and people are invited, VIP, special invitation. When it comes to lunch or dinner or breakfast, there's no respect for the Jews who are there, or the Christians who are there, or the Hindus who are there. And here, I was just one person. And when I went down in the cafeteria area, and they said, okay, we got a halal meal for you, I must thank you for that. That was really phenomenal. I did not expect it.
Well, I will take a little credit, but for the staff that made sure that meal got there, and I hope it was enjoyable for you.
It was, and I really appreciate the thought and the whole principle behind it. It speaks a lot. It really says that a lot of things, because a lot of times I know Muslims criticize America for that, and they criticize, hospitals and the army and correctional institutions. And your presence here on this program today can say a lot, because if we would go through, or if Muslims or Jews or whoever will go through the right channel, I think the necessary provision will be made. Don't you think so?
Well, yes, and I think that brings up this idea of working, how important it is to work locally. Like for years you've worked in Miami, and I really appreciate that effort. Me, I move every couple of years, but you've had the long road here, and the grand events, I think, come about by the simple strategies. Like, for instance, what good does it do me to invite you to ask your opinion, and you were very well spoken at the symposium, and then not provide for your meal?
Right.
And as you said, that sends a pretty empty message.
Yes.
Even in the Christian scriptures, the Lord says, well, what good does it do, if you tell somebody to, be prosperous, but you don't give them a piece of bread or something like that. That our actions here on earth say a lot about, how we will matter in heaven. And I think part of that is the simple acts of sharing the meal, sharing, who we are like that.
So no, and I think that's really, really unique, and I wish a lot more people can get that message and remember the importance of entertaining your guest. In Islam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says that you're not a true believer if you don't treat your guest well. And I mean, people will treat their guest when they come home on a personal basis, but on such a high-tech public forum, to be so conscious of your guest, I think that's a big, deep message with a lot of values. And it speaks a lot, and I really want to congratulate you and your team and staff for that.
Well,
so tell me a little bit, now that you said that your main mission with the U.S. Army and the soldiers, etc., is to ensure that people have religious rights.
And I think this is something that's worth clarifying, that more and more our commanders who are in charge of those missions understand the importance, just like they want to take care of the physical needs, the emotional needs, the mental needs. They want to take care of the spiritual and the religious needs as a matter of fact, that when a person wants to have their religious needs, that they are responded to. And for the American forces, which is what our chaplains deal with, we don't deal with other forces, but we are very concerned about that, and our commanders are as well. And more, I'm encouraging the chaplains, talk about what you believe,
Yes.
but then be willing to listen to what other people say as well.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes where we all have difficulty.
Yes.
I want to get my point out, but now am I willing to listen to you make your point? And every time when we have the symposium, and again, we'll have another one of those, which you'll be invited to.
Inshallah.
Lord God willing,
yes.
that we want to provide for a way to talk about how our chaplains can get training, can get practice, and that we can normalize discussions of religion, because we have kind of fallen out of practice for that in the United States, because, and rightly so, we have religious toleration. We want to let people freely practice their religion. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the process of that, we've kind of gotten away from expressing our own selves and our own thoughts, and understanding, as you and I talk, that we model that.
Yes,
when we have the symposium. I guess that's what was my point. We want to model this for other people, because let's face it, if we just talk about it and never demonstrate it, what good is that? And yes, there's risk.
Yes.
And yes, there is misunderstanding. And I think it's one of the reasons that I accepted this invitation, was because I think you, like I, appreciate the necessity of taking some risk to talk about both the joys and some of the challenges of working multi-faith.
Yes, and it's very important. It's really, really important for people to understand that, because, otherwise it simply becomes a dialogue. Talk, and then you don't get into the real understanding and communication and fraternity. And I think we would have missed the point if we don't get further into that sort of communication, because I always believe that's why God created us. One of the wisdom in God creating us to live in this world together, different faiths and different beliefs, is so that we will understand each other. In the Quran, God tells us that in chapter 49, He has created people in different races and different nations, not so that they would despise one another, but so that they will come to know one another, live better with one another, understand one another. And He does say that those who do their duty to God, and if we want to use the word pious or or fulfilling the commands of God and do the righteous deeds, they are the ones who are better. Meaning, it's not that we should use our nationality or our color or wealth or position to think that we are better than anybody. We need to come to know each other, live together, be nice, and don't take credit for any other reason but what God gives to us. Because when we are good in the eyes of God, that is what makes us better. And we have seen that. From the religious perspective, you have seen that. People who boast about their temporary power and strength, it doesn't really put them anywhere at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we all go down, as you say, into the grave, or we die and disappear, and that's it.
Yeah, well, I could not agree more, and it's like the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, that part of it, he says, let me seek to understand rather than to be understood.
Yes.
So that the first thing is to seek understanding, which means I maybe ask a question, but then I'm willing to listen. That's not easy for me. For instance, I enjoy talking, but I realize I'll never learn if I'm not quiet. And that when you seek understanding, you open yourself up. Again, it involves risk.
Yes.
I do not want to underplay that at all. It involves the risk, but even among Christians, I mean, and not extreme beliefs. I believe there ought to be more dialogue, more conversations, talking about views of Scripture, of the book, learning some language. I mean, you shared some things with me. We were talking about marriage, and you shared some things out of the Quran that I had no idea. And it challenges me to look at the Christian Scriptures, the Hebrew Scriptures, to say, okay, what does that say? And if I could, when you were at the symposium, you made what I thought was a very important comment about the importance of people getting into the Scriptures, the book. For us, the Bible, the Christian Scriptures, the Hebrew Scriptures, the Quran, of going to the book and not going so much to other traditions, which, let's face it, we do a lot of, our tradition, the way we grew up. But your call basically was one that I would like to hear from more people. Go to the book, study the book, and then let's talk about that.
And I tell people that all the time, if Christians, Jews, Muslims, and people of other faiths would really go to their scriptures, there will be so many more commonalities we will see among ourselves and have such a wonderful fraternity and harmony amongst ourselves. A lot of these differences in the world were because men went and interpreted the book the way they wanted, from their culture, from their political view, with their own agenda. And those were some of the reasons why we had so many wars and disunity among people in the world. And then religion carries the blame, and you have people saying religion were the reason for most wars, but that's not true. Men were the reasons for most wars. They misinterpreted the scriptures of God. And if they would go literally to the scriptures of God and try to understand what God wanted and what he says, we will really be a better people. But we don't. It happens in all faiths. It does happen in all faiths.
Well, it provides, again, an opportunity, an approach. And, for me, it's always an opportunity to learn. For instance, when a soldier comes up and says, I'm Baha'i, or I'm Buddhist, as has happened, or Seventh-day Adventist, and I knew a little bit about Seventh-day Adventists, but the question I asked him is, what is your need? And then it's my call, under the direction of the commander, to try and respond to that need and to provide. So I have to ask that person questions. Well, tell me a little bit more about your faith and what is exactly that you're asking for. And then I try and respond to that. It might be some literature. I remember one time we had a Buddhist and he needed a candle. And, we were able to get him a candle. It was a very, to you and me, that seems so simple, but in the environment we were in, he didn't have one.
Yes.
So, and then created a sacred space. So a lot of times it's creating a sacred space, or a soldier comes, I remember when I was in Germany, taking a Jewish soldier whose grandmother had died, in the United States. And because we were in the field training, he was not able to go back to the States for the funeral. So I took him to try and find some other Jewish people so he could at least have a prayer, and we weren't able to get him exactly what he wanted, but he really appreciated that anybody cared or tried to find it. And in the end, we did what we could for him. And that responds to the difficulty of our, I'll speak from the Army perspective, soldiers, but Marines, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen. They're all over the place. And a lot of times a special festival or observance, such as Ramadan or Lent for Christians comes up, Easter, there are all kinds of festivals, and they can't worship the way they want to.
Yes.
And a lot of times, all we can do is, as a chaplain, is try and provide some sacred space for them. And I believe it's in those opportunities that we are sending the same message that you and I want to send, that there's a lot of things we don't understand. But this we do understand, that when you get a couple of people with goodwill, there's a lot we can do. We can respond to one another with goodwill.
That's really, really, really powerful. That's very deep what you have said. Well, Colonel Michael Lembke, it's really a pleasure to have you with us again on Alhikmat TV and on this show, Interfaith Views and Issues. So we're going to take a short break right now, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with our very honored guest in the studio, Colonel Michael Lembke, and I would like to ask him a little bit of his experience in Bosnia and whatever else he wants to share with us when we return, inshallah.
Alhikmat has been serving the Muslim and non-Muslim communities for the past 30 years through the publishing and distribution of Islamic literature and radio, and also TV programs, plus interfaith activities. Due to the demand and many requests of non-Muslims and new Muslims for Islamic literature, we request you to donate generously $1 fi sabilillah in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards distribution of the Holy Quran, Alhikmat TV 24/7 online, Dawah publications, Surah and Zikr books, genealogy of the prophets, feeding and clothing the poor, orphans, and the needy, students seeking to study Islam, printing of Islamic publications, our monthly Muslim magazine, One God, Same Religion Dawah brochures, Quranic Arabic reader with Tajweed for students, and also to support our Dawah activities, you can also contact Al-Hikmat offices at 954-986-0158. at 954-986-0158, or you can also visit our website at www.alhikmat.com. That is www.alhikmat.com. You can also make checks payable to Alhikmat Services Incorporated, or you can donate with a credit card on PayPal at www.alhikmat.com.
Welcome back to Interfaith Views and Issues on Alhikmat TV. And once more again, it's a pleasure to have with us in the studio in Alhikmat TV, Chaplain Colonel Michael Lembke. Welcome to the show again. And as we were saying before we went on the break, Colonel, your experience in different countries and places you have traveled in your profession and career, would you like to share a little bit about your experience in any one of these countries?
Yeah, in particular, Sheikh, thanks. In Bosnia, in 2000, I served there, and it's really when I first got interested and was around other chaplains that were involved in what one of the chaplains called spiritual diplomacy. Oh. This idea of outreach, and of course, as you may or may not know, in Bosnia at that time, of course, the active part of the war there was well over, but still the scars are very deep.
So before that, you were not deeply involved in religious activities?
Not really, other than through my own, Lutheran connections and some dialogue.
So you were just a regular soldier in the
I
army?
I was a chaplain.
Okay.
I've been a chaplain since 1982.
Okay.
And came on active duty in 1986. So I've always been a chaplain. but my interest in multi-faith, interfaith dialogue really began in Bosnia.
Okay, good, good.
And this idea of spiritual diplomacy, where the chaplains, our office would engage Bosnian Serbs who tended mostly to be Orthodox Christians, Bosnian Croats who tended to be mostly Roman Catholic, and then the Bosniaks, those that are Muslims. And I met the Bosniaks had chaplains in the military. This Bosnian Serbs, Bosnian Croats didn't have military chaplains yet. So we spent a lot of time talking about how do you meet the needs of your soldiers in the military, which of course is not a contentious question. It's one that we can talk about. And what I found out was that the Bosniak chaplains, the Muslim chaplains, you know, they dealt with Christians that when they're in their unit by having them go home and go to mass. That they weren't prohibiting people, and that once we started talking about an openness, and again I say an opportunity, there were, you know, many of the clergy there and the chaplains responded very positively to working together and not drawing their lines so specifically. So I've written a lot of music over the years, and I appreciate you letting me share a song that I wrote called "When the Wire Comes Down," and by that I mean the barbed wire. When the barbed wire gets taken down, you know, what would that look like? Because around all of our camps and everything, there was always barbed wire all over the place.
Wow.
So, you know, the idea of when the wire comes down, and you know, part of it is, you know, people might say, well, you're naive, you know, there's always going to be war and strife and violence and people not like each other. And I acknowledge that's true. At the same time, I think in addition to religious dialogue, the arts, music, poetry, cultural expression can be helpful. So I share this song with you.
No, and to have that that background and to be around in wars and in the army and still have a very religious personality, diversity, looking for love and fraternity and harmony. I mean, that's great credit to you, and I really, really appreciate that.
When the wire comes down and we all shake hands and we know a peace that's gonna last. When the dividing walls crumble at our feet and we can finally breathe and rest. When the kids are at play and no one will say, I'm out of work or I'm out of time. We'll see a rainbow in the sky and a light of new hope in our eyes. We'll be the captive of none, all hearts are one. When the wire comes down for good, it will be good. When the wire comes down, all people of faith will be able to walk in their own way of grace. God won't divide us, prayer might unite us, difference vanishes without a trace. We'll see a rainbow in the sky and the light of new hope in our eyes. We'll be the captive of none, all hearts are one. When the wire comes down for good, it will be good.
Wow, that was really, really, really wonderful. I mean, it's like you were preaching there. In addition to a song, I didn't know you sing so wonderful, man.
Well, thank you.
I'll
receive that.
You really sang wonderful. I mean, you made it. I mean, you could have been one of those pop singers on television here now.
Well, thanks. I have been told, you know, keep your day job as a chaplain, but I enjoy sharing the music, and I think the arts are another area for dialogue and expression how, because we're trying, in religion, in helping people understand that religion does really matter, is giving voice to that expression through dance, through prayer posture, through poetry, through a song, like for instance even the call to prayer, the music, or in the Christian tradition, the chanting, where you get into that's a way to get into the Word.
So you wrote that song?
I
right?
did, yeah.
It was so deep, I must say. Very wonderful meaning.
Well, I'll get you a copy.
Yes, I would really love that.
But it was exciting in Bosnia, and then I began to talk to other military chaplains, mostly Army, American Army, and it got a lot of differing opinions. Some good, some not good. But over the years, it's been a way to engage people in the American forces and in other countries. When I was in Iraq, we engaged local clergy, and now here in Miami, I'm engaging local clergy. It's the same. It's really the same methodology, and my main mission is with United States military forces. And I realized that those military forces in a place like Miami, they go to church. We don't have a chapel at Southcom, so they're going to churches in other places. They're exercising their faith in other ways. So it's important for me to engage the greater South Florida area so I can become conversant with what's out there.
And being a chaplain and being a religious person, preaching the message of God to these people, when I mean to a point of trying to get them into the godly world, if I would want to put it like that, I think that's a hard job for you, because you're dealing with a real different kind of people. People who are in guns, in the army, and they're hearing all these things, seeing all these things, your heart, your brain, your body, your mind, everything got to be hard and stern. And for you to soften them up, I think it takes a lot of good charisma on your side.
Well, I love my work in the military, and it's a call, certainly, and well supported by our command, by General Kelly and all the staff at Southcom, in providing the latitude for me to reach out on behalf of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard. We have a lot of different people at Southcom, and our civilians, to make sure that I understand what their needs might be, and have a very good experience in exercising faith and being involved in the lives of people.
No, that's superb. And Colonel Lembke, it will be a pleasure to have you again on this show, and maybe we could discuss some other aspect on religion matters, and some other, from a religious perspective and a humanitarian perspective, how maybe working together we can bring more peace and harmony and love in the world among different faiths and different cultures. So I'd really look forward to having you again on the show, and I'm sure that our viewers would have enjoyed this conversation between us. Before we conclude, is there anything you would like to share with our audience and our viewers throughout the world?
Well, I will look forward to many future engagements with you, Sheikh, but I would like to make a presentation to you. I'm holding it up here so the cameraman can get it. But a very simple gesture from myself, the Religious Affairs Office at the United States Southern Command, to say thanks for your participation, partnership, engagement, and mutual support. As I said, Southcom's all about partnership for the Americas, and so I'm always on the lookout for people that are interested in partnership. And along with that,
so this is the what you call the Religion Matters Symposium.
Right. There was a couple of pictures from Religion Matters.
This is the rabbi here, and this is one of your soldiers there.
That's me. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I was looking at you here
and
with me there.
Yeah. But just a simple gesture, and then a coin that represents United States Southern Command, and I want to present that to you as well,
Thank
Sheikh,
you very much.
and
It's
say
a pleasure.
thanks.
This is really beautiful. I mean, wow. And what these stars represent here?
Well, this is the 5 services. As I said, I've been listing off the Army, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and the civilians. This represents the military organizations that all serve at United States Southern Command.
Well, this is a pleasure. At least it's an honor for me to have this, which officially shows our bond and our relationship and a friend. When people see this now, they'll say, who is that connection you got with the U.S. Army? Thank
That's
you very
right.
much. Thank you.
Thanks
It's a pleasure.
again. I appreciate
Thank you.
it.
It's a pleasure. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll keep this up. Well, friends, you have been blessed today on this show to look at an interview or to hear opinions and the experience of a great friend and wonderful friend here, Colonel Michael Lembke, his experience, his travel, his interfaith knowledge and background and experience with the U.S. Army as a chaplain and a colonel. It has indeed been a pleasure, and I hope this would enlighten you viewers throughout the world, especially in the Far East and West, etc. You will see the fraternity and the harmony that exists among people of higher levels, as opposed to the negativity that you see on the media generally, and the differences that exist between people. That is just a minority, as opposed to people like Colonel Michael Lembke and his warmth. The song that he sang is so deep religiously. It is so beautiful. It's like words from the scriptures. It has really been a pleasure to have him with us, and I want to pray that God showers his mercy on him, his guidance, his protection, and gives Colonel Lembke the good in this world and the good in the hereafter. Thank you very much, and thank you very much again, Colonel, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu, 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 Allah.